One of the ways you stay in the game through the despair is to free yourself from the myth of measurement. Measurement is a profoundly powerful tool. You're going to study lots of things. You've already studied lots of things in which you use measurement. You can't run an organization without measuring things. You can't locate the progress you're making in a school or in a clinic, a hospital, without measuring things. We save lives in medicine because we can measure lots of things internal to the body. But measurement is a tool. It doesn't capture all truth. You can't actually measure good. This came home to me years ago when my children were little. We have a holiday here which you will experience in October called Halloween. And on Halloween, the children get into costumes and they go into the neighborhoods and they collect candy. Years ago when my children were little, my parents came to visit, and it happened to be during the holiday of Halloween. My father was one of the great brain surgeons of his time. He invented many of the instruments that are used in neurosurgery. So in his lifetime, he saved thousands of people's lives, some of them with his own hands, some of them indirectly through the instruments that he developed. When he retired from medicine, he went back to a childhood hobby. He always loved looking at the stars. And he thought he would like to introduce his grandchildren to the heavens. So he went out and bought all the astronomy books he could find to introduce his grandchildren. And he said to himself, I don't like any of these books, so I'm going to write my own. So he wrote an astronomy book, and he sent it off to a publisher of astronomy books, Cambridge University Press. They said, this is pretty good. We're going to match you with a great illustrator, and we're going to publish it. It's called A Walk Through the Heavens, Cambridge University Press, $12.95. He also wrote one for the Southern Hemisphere. So he happened to publish that first book, A Walk Through the Heavens, just before Halloween. And on that Halloween, we invited a young man to our house to come with us into the neighborhood with the children. This young man, his name is Rick Stemple. He used to live with us when he was a student. Now it was several years later, and he was a school teacher. We had a really nice evening, out in the neighborhood with the children. And at the end of the evening, he came back to the house. My parents were there. And I thought, Rick is a school teacher. I'm going to give him a copy of my father's astronomy book. So I brought a copy of the book up. Rick looks at the book. My children are standing there. And he opens it up, and he notices that the book is dedicated to all the grandchildren, including my two. He then closes the book. He turns to my father and asks my father if he could borrow a pen. My father reaches into his pocket. He pulls out a pen. He starts smiling, and he expects Rick to ask him to sign the book. But that's not what Rick does. Rick gets down on his knee. He opens the book to the dedication page, and he asks my two children to sign the book. So in 1-inch scrawl, diagonally across the page, my children sign their names. And as they're signing their names, I turn and look up to my father. I was a little taller than my father, but I always looked up to my father, wondering, what's he feeling? And I see just the beginning of tears in his eyes. And I realize 40 years of saving lives could not be measured against the meaning of that moment. I don't think any of us, when we die and pass on and visit with the angels, are going to be asked, how come you created 17 jobs and not 38? How come you stopped one war and not two? How come you saved 7,500 lives and not 8,612? Why did you teach 600 children and not 750? You can't measure good. If you turn the lights on behind one child's eyes, can you measure that? It says in my tradition, which is shared by many of your traditions, you save one life, you save the world. I think you stay in the game, maintaining the patience, tolerating the moments of despair, by staying in touch with the good that you're doing, the meaning of the good that you're doing that's beyond any measure. And by giving yourself permission to take pleasure and heart and joy in the fruits of your own labor. And all of you have already done a lot of good in the world. You've touched lives. You've turned on the lights someplace with somebody or many people. And I think in staying alive in your spirit, you have to let yourself reconnect with all of that good that you have done already. I mean, you get to quit and go to heaven. If you only look at all that's left undone, you're more at risk of burning out. I think it's really important to rejoice in the fruits of your labor. And one of the ways you can help each other over time ahead is to remind each other, because we forget quickly. And that would be my prayer for all of you. May you help each other take pleasure, gain joy from the fruits of your labor. Take care of each other.